bust dude up. Yeah, you can be my trainer. Word up. I'm rough like a freight train, smooth like ice, and yo, just straight up, I think I can beat Mike Tyson.
KBLA Talk 1580. A classic Will Smith jam in honor of tonight's big fight. Mike Tyson versus that YouTube guy. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really, really happy to have on with me right now an award-winning journalist, professor, and artist. He's contributed to the New York Times, Variety, NBC, CNN International, and Channel Q, among others. He's now back in school. He's the author of Historically Black Phrases. And he's taking a moment from his studies to join us this morning. Jarrett Hill, welcome.
Dominique, you always make me sound so great. I appreciate you.
Well, you do the work to make yourself sound great. Yeah, a lot of stuff to unpack. We were just talking about reparations because we do that every week with attorney Charisse Cryer. She said Democratic Party needs to rebrand itself. I said I don't agree, but I didn't want to linger on it because we were talking reparations. But what I meant by that, Charisse, is that when we start talking about the Dems need to, focus on the economy or rebrand or whatever, I feel like we're letting them off the hook and letting America off the hook for racism and misogyny, which to me, any analysis of what happened in this election that doesn't acknowledge the fact that racism played a huge role and misogyny played a huge role is falling short. That's my take. Your thoughts?
I apologize for missing the last hour. I was in a meeting, but I couldn't agree with you more. I've been finding the takes that people have about, this was really about the economy, right? This was really about immigration. This was really about policy. This was really about, I'm like, when that analysis doesn't have an analysis that talks about whiteness and white supremacy and the fact that white people voted for this man, I'm really not interested in your analysis at that point, right? Because to me, like, if we want to talk about the economy piece of it is frustrating because Black folks experience the economy more difficultly than anybody else, right? Like, we've seen Black folks always have the highest rates of unemployment. We have the lowest. We are at the furthest extreme of the wealth gap. We experience the economy in ways that are the most difficult of any community. So,
yeah, I mean, and of course, during the commercials, me and Charisse agreed on that. She's brilliant. I'm not meaning to undermine what she said. I just wanted to clarify why I said that. But the other piece is, and we definitely agreed on this, I feel like, to your point, Jarrett, about, it's the economy, it's the immigration, it's the Democrats are the elite, blah, blah, ad nauseum. Dems try to take pieces of the progressive agenda and enact little bits of it without following through all the way on it. And, and then they back off of it and run after Liz Cheney and, chase these unicorn, soccer mom, independent, undecided, people who are really Republicans, instead of moving to the progressive side of the party, which is where the energy is. And I'm talking about student loan forgiveness. I'm talking about Medicare for all. I'm talking about, the policies that are really popular with the American people if you take the label of Dem, Republican, or progressive off of them.
Well, I love the other points that you brought up here about student loans and about Medicare, right? Like, those are also economic issues.
Yeah,
right?
True
like,
that.
Student loans are something that have a huge impact on folks. And when we think about the ways that affects Black folks, like, if we make less money and have less money and also have student loan debt, because we know that, especially when we're thinking about Black women are the most educated demographic of any breakdown of the groups. Like, we know that student loan debt is a huge part of that. If we think about Medicare, medical costs, we know that, like, having one medical need that goes awry can bankrupt you, right? And we know that the idea of going bankrupt as a Black person is something that is a huge concern when we think about our economics. And so, like, there are so many of these different issues that are distinctly economic issues that are distinctly frustrating to hear when we think about immigration. Immigration, if we're talking about the border, like, we know that the narratives about immigration are very different than the information, right, than the facts about immigration. We know that same thing is true about crime. We know that crime has been down, right? But we're thinking about we're talking about Donald Trump being this great candidate that's going to bring down crime when, like, we don't even have to get into the fact that he's a convicted felon, right? Like, there's so many different ways to approach that conversation that are just frustrating to me, that when we have this analysis that comes from, you know, the pundit class and the Democratic strategists and all of these different things, I fully agree with you that oftentimes we will dabble in the direction of change and dabble in moving in a certain kind of direction of wanting to help queer and trans people, or wanting to help the poor, or wanting to help, you know, insert group here. But we really won't lean into it because we're afraid that, you know, these other people aren't going to vote for it, or maybe it's too much or it's too far.
Right. But yet, you know, Maxine Waters wins her reelection by a landslide. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wins her reelection. Ilhan Omar wins. Rashida Tlaib wins. Yeah, it's true they primaried Cori Bush and, you know, Jamal Bowman, but they spent literally millions and millions of dollars to do that. So it seems to me that my analysis of the problem with the Democratic Party is they're too doggone conservative and too corporate. They need to be, you know, they need to be about the Bernie Sanders agenda, the Elizabeth Warren agenda, the squad agenda. That, to me, those are the things that fix the economic problems of the American people, not dabbling around the edges with some mealy-mouth corporate agenda.
You know, one of the things that concerned me during the campaign, and I want to be clear, I don't think this is like, oh, this is why Kamala didn't win. And I don't believe that at all. But I do think that there was an interesting dynamic of having as wide a range of support from Dick Cheney to Bernie Sanders, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is a pretty wide swing, right? And so I think that there was an interesting element of this that did make me think, okay, so when President Kamala Harris is now in office, what are the things that are going to be required to be able to hold on to that support from Dick Cheney?
Yeah, right. Right. What did you promise? What did you promise? What did you promise?
Well, what did you promise, or what's going to be expected, right? I think about the electorate that would be influenced by something like that. And if it's Dick Cheney, for instance, if someone is influenced by Dick Cheney or Liz Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, what are they going to be expecting from a Kamala Harris, even if they didn't make an agreement with her because they've never met her, right? But like, I'm thinking about it from that perspective. What's going to be required from the person who's influenced by a Bernie Sanders endorsement or a Bernie Sanders kind of perspective? What's going to be expected of that President Harris, right? And that was a fascinating element to me.
Yeah, for me, this idea that, I agree with that, because when I heard the Dick Cheney endorsement, I am the base. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make me want to vote for you. That makes me worried.
Yeah. Well, I totally get that perspective, and I think there were a lot of people that felt that way. I know that it landed for me as this is an indicator of how significant this threat is to our country. Right, and to the idea of democracy, and to
it's a good way of looking at it.
We about to go off a cliff here, y'all. Right, we done gone a little too far. Dick Cheney done came in here talking about, all right, I'm with y'all. Right, like that's how it landed to me. But I definitely know that there are people who are like, Dick Cheney.
Yeah, because when I think of Dick Cheney, I think of torture. That's what I think of.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. When I think about Dick Cheney, I think about like him being the mastermind of the George Bush administration, as he was often described, right? And so like the idea of Dick Cheney being on board was definitely concerning, but it said to me like, oh, at least we are having some indicators here of the significance of this moment and this candidate.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Such a wise and non-reactive take. I
don't know about
Jarrett Hill. Yeah, for sure. So I think when we can start to look at what is taking shape before our eyes, again, you know, perhaps you'll be less reactive. I don't want to be the person that falls for the trolling, right? Like to the extent that the president-elect is trolling all of us by selecting Matt Gaetz or Tulsi Gabbard, who may or may not be able to get confirmed by the Senate, although he's talking about doing recess appointments, under which he could pretty much confirm anyone he wanted. But at the same time, I do want to be clear about what is being revealed by this flurry of proposed appointments. What do you make of them?
Well, I'm in your boat with this one. I mean, if I'm honest with you, I'm still hoping and praying that by the time certification comes, we've learned that they didn't try to steal this election too. And like I'm thinking about that a lot, and I know we're not in media talking about that very much, but I'm looking at all of these appointments as Donald Trump is showing us he is about to wile out. And I remember in 2016 when he was in his first campaign, one of my big concerns were like, who are the people that will be a part of a cabinet for this kind of candidate? And then we saw the answers to that, right?
Yeah.
They were perceived as his guardrails for a while, and then the replacements came in a lot of different roles, and they weren't great either. And so now I think we're seeing like these are going to be exponentially worse, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
when I heard Matt Gaetz' name, Matt Gaetz is one of those people who. How is his name even on the list if we're thinking about qualifications, let alone him being the pick, right? And so it's like, no, you're doing a thing here. You are doing something that a television producer would do, right? And say, let's send them some shock and some awe. Let's piss them off. Let's really frustrate them. Let's confuse them. Let's get them talking about this. Because Matt Gaetz is someone that we should not even be having a discussion about being able to serve in any office at this point.
Yeah.
As well as Donald Trump. But like the idea that he's the pick to be the attorney general, as we're getting ready to have a congressional report come out about his seeming alleged crimes, like it's wild.
Which are sex trafficking and sleeping with underage persons, i.e. pedophilia. So, I mean, yeah, that's the guy you want in charge of the Department of Justice. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, someone was saying, I hope the DOJ isn't within 100 feet of a school, right? And like, we can joke about that, but it's also true.
It's true, right? And it's terrible. Like, I mean, I'm definitely in laugh to keep from crying mode. Todd Blanche, the president-elect's defense attorney, deputy attorney general. I get my criminal defense lawyer to be the deputy attorney general. Pretty clear signal there, right?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've been hearing more people use the phrase "F around and find out" in the last month or so, in the last couple of weeks, and now especially since the election. I remember seeing I believe it was the Secretary of State or one of the officials in Philadelphia saying, if you want to come mess with our elections, you can. He used the language "F around and find out," and he said that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting coming from a government official. And now I feel like that the election is over. We're really moving into the find out period where people are starting to see like he would put who? He chose what? Right? And I think we're going to be seeing that for a while.
Yeah. We're talking with Jarrett Hill. He is an award-winning journalist and a professor. You mentioned something. I want to talk about it when we continue this conversation. Not whizzing by that. You're hoping that before the certification, actually, mainstream media is not talking about that, but we've been chatting a bit about it around here. And of course, you all are invited in 800-920-1580. Let's talk about it, figure it out, unpack it. We are KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
I feel like I'm constantly cleaning hair off my bathroom floor. At least my Swiffer sweeper makes it easy. Sweeper heavy-duty dry cloths have ultra-thick pads to trap and lock hairs, like a hair magnet. And when I'm finished cleaning up my hair, Sweeper takes care of his too. Now the hair's gone, all thanks to Swiffer. Try Swiffer Sweeper heavy-duty dry cloths. I promise you'll love them or your money back. And also try Swiffer Sweeper Wet to make quick work of tough, sticky messes.
Lowe's knows you want to get even more value for the holiday. That's why as a My Lowe's Rewards member, you get new member deals on holiday decor, tools, and more. And you earn points when you shop. More points equal more rewards to help you save on holiday and more. Not a member? Join for free today at Lowe's.com/MyLowe'sRewards because Lowe's knows deals. Program subject to terms and conditions. Points are awarded on eligible purchases. See Lowe's.com/terms for full details. Subject to change.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at WalkGoodLA. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jarrett Hill is with me. You're invited in at 800-920-1580. 800-920-1580. He is the author, by the way, of Historically Black Phrases. Not sure if FAFO is one of those, but sure feels like it could be. I feel like I've been saying a lot of those since last Tuesday, the 5th of November. Jarrett Hill, where can we get your book? How can we be down with that?
You can go to historicallyblackphrases.com to find out about getting the book, and it's also available wherever books are sold. I believe F Around and Find Out is in there. I'm about to look it up. I'll have an answer for you in a moment.
Okay. I mean, nowadays our phrases are so quickly co-opted into the mainstream that sometimes it's hard to track them because of social media. It just seems to take about 12 seconds for it to become widespread. So
I will say it is on page 99 for the record. I just want to.
Oh, you want to share what it says?
Well, the book is a book of our phrases. So it's historically black phrases from one of your little friends to who all gonna be there, and it's basically like, how do we use these phrases? Like, what do we mean when we say these things? And in that page, we say, like, the most basic translation is, your actions will lead to negative consequences, right? Like, it's basically saying, like, what you just did right here, you about to find out why you didn't want to do that. And that's really where we are as a country right now.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, you kind of said, and you know, a lot of us, I'm putting myself in the us here, believe that something is fishy with this election. It seemed like certain precincts and counties that are highly improbable to go red went red. I think the fact that we're, you know, that the current president-elect is backed by this cabal of you know, tech bros who have who are innovators and certainly seem to have the ability to hack anything, as Elon Musk once said, makes it seem like, well, we'd like to see some proof that this is legit. And also, there could be an element of denial. I definitely don't want my country to be that effed up. But Peter Thiel, Joe Lonsdale of Palantir, David Sachs of PayPal, Balaji Srinivasan of Coinbase, Palmer Luckey of Anduril Industries, all these billionaire tech bros, it makes one wonder.
Listen, I'm gonna take off my award-winning journalist and journalism professor and all the things that you said. I'm gonna take that hat off for a moment and just be Jarrett, a voter who has been involved in politics and looking at how these things work, and just say, like, something in the buttermilk ain't clean. right? Like, which is also in the book for the record. But it's one of those moments of being like, this just don't feel like it makes sense to me, right? Like, she lost all them swing states. Now, come on, right? Like, as we're looking at the various different ways that this campaign was historic, with raising the most money of any campaign, with being the shortest campaign that we've ever seen, with we love to talk about crowd sizes, which are obviously not scientific, but like the various different pieces of that are all making it really challenging to understand how, juxtaposed to Donald Trump, who, was outspent multiple times, or excuse me, was out fundraised multiple times, was, by the last week of his campaign, again, crowd sizes aren't scientific, but like there were plenty of crowds that were half full, right? 3/4 full, plenty of empty seats, showing that he didn't have the support that he may have thought he was going to have in those different places. To then come out and like win every swing state, I'm like, it just don't feel right, right? There's something about it that doesn't make sense. Now, from more of a journalistic perspective, I also think that these people will tell on themselves. We've already seen Joe Rogan on his podcast talking to one of his guests, Theo Von, there saying, well, I was talking to Elon earlier on the day of the election, and he had already kind of like tapped out, hours before it was over, saying, oh, I already looked at it and Trump won. And I'm like, well, how was that possible when people were still voting?
Yeah, and he also said that Elon Musk had an app, a special secret app. What even is that?
Yeah, and I mean, the idea of, I was repeating that to a friend, and they were like, I don't even think Elon Musk can code, so like the idea that he created the app is a challenge for me. But like, he was like, the idea that like he might have different access to all kinds of different information. I will remind people that like Elon Musk runs the internet for a lot of the globe, right? Like,
right, and Elon Musk
around the globe.
He might not be able to code, but he may have some coder tied up in the basement that he took the app from. I mean, that's more likely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Like, and so I mean, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist, even though I don't know that conspiracy theorists consider themselves conspiracy theorists. But I also want to note that, like, when we think about this country and the things that we've seen happening here, there have been plenty of instances where there actually was a conspiracy of different things happening to be able to move something in a certain kind of direction. So it's not unreasonable for us to be asking these questions. I'm open to the possibility that I'm in denial, right? I think we've all been, well, many of us have been experiencing many of the symptoms of grief, denial being one of them, as we like look at where this country stands to go. But like, I'm open to the possibility of that, but I'm also just like thinking logically as a human being who is looking at the evidence in front of me and being like, something about this don't seem right.
Yeah, that's why I've been called advocating, because I'm also open to the fact that I could be in denial. But advocating, I'd like to see some statistical modeling. Can we get some mathematical modeling that shows if we can find maybe 3 or 5, precincts or counties that statistically almost impossible for them to go red, and then just recount those. That would do it for me.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges, like, you named, various different billionaires who were on Donald Trump's supporting his campaign. And the idea of like all of these people who run all of these different systems and all of our electronic voting that is run through the internet and run through these different machines, like there's plenty of reason to consider like there could be something awry here, right? Like and I also kind of justify that question with, it's not like they didn't try to steal the last one.
Right. Well, that's true.
It's not like they
that's a
didn't
good point.
storm the Capitol. It's not like they didn't bust into the Capitol and onto the Senate and the House floors and through the offices of our Capitol in an insurrection, like to try and steal the last election. So the idea that they wouldn't be more sophisticated the second time around, like, come on. So
yeah, that's a great point. And I think you're right about the telling on themselves. I've said that too. These folks are slick, but they ain't that slick. And Rachel Maddow, I played it on the show, had a compilation of Trump saying, "Oh, you don't worry about votes. I have more votes than we've ever had in history. Oh, you don't have to vote for me." In the last couple of weeks before the election.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Donald Trump going to, Christian conferences and talking to Christians about this is the last time you'll have to vote. You don't have to vote. He was kind of vacillating between those two different messages of if you vote this one more time, you don't have to vote ever again. Right. And then saying like, I don't even need your votes. We've got all the votes we need. And it's like, what does it mean we've got all the votes we need? Early voting hadn't even started yet.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so like, yeah.
Yeah. Fishiness. And I think we do have to talk about it because somebody has to. Right. And I think that a lot of folks don't want to because they're not willing to take off their award-winning journalism hat. But even with the hat on, we can ask questions.
That's the job, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're supposed to be doing here. And, like, I think that in this country, our media is typically so white focused, right? And so considered on like the white gaze, the white lens, and really making sure to stay aligned with that when we see someone like Eddie Glaude on MSNBC saying to Stephanie Ruhle, there's a reason that you don't want to believe this, is because it says something about you that you have to think about, right? Mm-hmm. I was speaking with one of my advisors here at school, and he used this phrase that I told him, I'm going to steal from you. I will attribute it to you, Stephen Harris, but there isn't an incentive to disbelief. Right. Of when we think about the ways in which, people are really trying to believe that it's about the economy. They're really trying to believe that it was about immigration. They're really trying to believe that it was about crime. They're really trying to believe that it's about anything other than the fact that was a Black and Asian woman. Right. And each of those things being important, the fact that she was Black and Asian and the fact that she's a woman had such a significant impact on people. There are plenty of people in this country who are not willing to vote for a woman for president, period.
Yeah. We got a hard stop here for news, traffic, and sports. Continuing the convo with Jarrett Hill when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know from BIN News. President-elect Trump is nominating Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Trump criticized the industrial food complex and drug companies for public health misinformation and praised Kennedy's stance against vaccine mandates, promising to restore transparency and scientific integrity in health agencies. Elon Musk announced he will work without compensation as head of the new Department of Government Efficiency under President-elect Trump. He expects the role to be challenging and to make many enemies. And Advance Auto Parts is closing over 700 locations nationwide as part of a restructuring plan. About 500 corporate and 200 independently owned stores will shut down by mid-2025. And the Christmas action comedy film Red One is hoping to do a bit of damage at the box office this weekend. The movie, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Chris Evans, is looking to make between $30 and $35 million in its debut. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
For any plumbing emergency, Rooter Hero Plumbing is California's top choice for rapid response, quality work, and customer satisfaction. Depend on them for lasting solutions. Book directly at rooterhero.com.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron is going for his 4th straight triple-double in tonight's game in San Antonio. It's one of the few milestones LeBron has not accomplished in his spectacular 22-year career. Longtime Spurs coach Greg Popovich will miss his 8th straight game. Pop is recovering from a mild stroke he suffered on November 2nd. Spurs assistant Mitch Johnson has been filling in for Pop. Tip-off time at 4:30 on ESPN. The Clippers have a rematch tonight with the Rockets in Houston at 5 p.m. Former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson slapped Jake Paul in the face during their weigh-in on Thursday. Security stepped in before things got out of hand. Tyson was upset that Paul stepped on his foot on purpose during the stare-down. Tyson and Paul square off tonight at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Netflix will have live coverage. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Medicare open enrollment is here, and it's a time you can make changes to your health coverage. Yet, watch out for enrollment and marketing scams. Remember, Medicare will neither call you nor solicit your business. Guard your card. Never give out your Medicare number to strangers. Unsolicited calls, door-to-door visits, and emails are prohibited. Take your time. Don't feel pressured to make a quick decision. Report scams to our California Senior Medicare Patrol at 1-855-613-7080.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do...
Let's play something, Grandma.
...became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline nasal spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
Mommy, want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let Mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with the award-winning journalist and professor Jarrett Hill. So much to kind of digest and unpack. 800-920-1580, 800-920-1580. That's the number if you want to call in. Jarrett, we've got Regina calling us from Long Beach. Good morning, Regina.
Uh-oh. No, you said Freedom Friday. I can't ask another question besides the topic.
What are you talking about? What's on your mind? Just go ahead and don't go off into a dissertation. Just say what you called
No.
us out.
I wanted the exercise gentleman's number.
Oh, Eric. Yeah. Stay on hold. Okay, she's in another world. I guess she didn't communicate that with Miles. But it is a Freedman Friday. We've been talking about reparations, Jarrett, and some folks are calling, Trump's speech about targeting anyone who does any schools that do DEI programs, taking their endowments and using them as fines to compensate people who have been harmed by DEI programs. We know, obviously, that wouldn't be us. But there's still folks holding out hope that the Trump administration will do something around reparations or something to reward the black folks who, although it was a very slim percentage, they were quite loud, the black people that did support him.
Well, you lost me at reward the black people, right? The idea that the Trump administration is going to be going out of its way for black folks is just hard for me to wrap my mind around. I think the main thing that Donald Trump always points to is he loves to say that he saved HBCUs and gave them all this money when we know the facts are he didn't want to do that in the first place, and they have to fight him to do it, and he wanted to be able to take credit for it after it was done. And so the idea that he's going to be bending over backwards for anybody is really, really hard to imagine. And when I say anybody, I mean anybody that's not a rich white man, right? We can already look at the people that he's appointed into his seeming first cabinet, and see, like, he's not, I think most of the people that I've seen have been white men. There's been a handful of folks who weren't, Tulsi Gabbard being one of them. But, like, he's not interested in any of that, right? He's here to get his revenge. And so he's going to put in the crazy person at the top of the Department of Justice. He's going to put in this crazy pick in Health and Human Services. He's going to put in crazy picks in education. He's going to put in crazy picks everywhere because he just wants to do what he wants to do, not serve anybody.
Yeah. You mentioned the emphasis on LGBTQ, but especially trans people. I mean, with J.D. Vance saying that he thinks they can get the normal gay guy vote. It seems
whatever that means.
Whatever that means, right? And it seems like it's been pretty effective. I mean, he's leading with it in the post victory period, and I wonder what this means. It feels like to me like trans people are really kind of scapegoats for this new Confederate authoritarian regime, and that worries me. I mean, I have trans friends, I have trans family members. How are you feeling?
I think that trans people are definitely one of the major targets that we're going to see coming out of this, right? I think that's because, one, there are folks that don't understand transness on both sides of the spectrum, on either end of the spectrum. There are folks who have not taken time to, like, understand transness or what transness is. There are plenty of people who think that transness is new, right? Donald Trump is in a video talking about how, essentially saying, like, we created transness a few years ago, and it's like trans people have been around since forever, right? Like, the same ways in which I like to remind folks that, like, Black folks, the idea that Black people can't do this or Black people aren't interested in that or we don't eat this or we don't go there or we don't get in the water, whatever. Black folks have done everything, right? We have been everywhere. We have shown up in every different kind of way, and trans and queer people have as well, right? We have been around since the beginning of civilization. We have been a part of the biggest movements that have ever happened. We've been a part of the most important innovations in the world. And depending on how you look at how trans folks have showed up in culture throughout, our even like through ancient history, we can see that trans people have always been here. Now, this fear and anger about them has also been present in a lot of different kinds of ways. But this is a very white supremacist patriarchal perspective on the world that says, like, if you are not falling in line with what we tell you need to be, you are wrong and we're going to get rid of you. And that's if you're a trans person, that's if you're a woman, that's if you're an immigrant, that's if you are in a poor class, if you're in any of these different places, you got to get up out of here. And I think trans folks are one of the groups that we're seeing right now that is really getting targeted.
Yeah, it's really worrisome. I didn't see it live, but I saw the president-elect making a statement that they are going to legislate that there are only two genders. To me, that's like legislating that there are no giraffes. We're going to legislate that there's no such thing as a giraffe. I mean, it just seems totally illogical to me. You just because you make a law that, the sky is purple doesn't make it so. But what do you think this means to LGBTQ people, to non-binary folks on the gender spectrum?
First thing I should know is the co-author of my book is one of my business partners for a long time, and we've worked in various different ways together, hosted a show together. We led NABJ in Los Angeles for a number of years. Tre'vell Anderson is a non-binary person of trans experience, and so, like, this is something that is in the front of mind for me in a lot of different ways for the people that I'm in community with. I will say that we should think about what the effect of saying that there are only two genders, what that is, right? I think about how when I was a kid in social studies and history classes, we would look at the map, and it was always interesting to me, like, how Egypt would be positioned as part of the Middle East, but it wouldn't be studied as part of Africa. Mm-hmm. How I would later learn that, like, the United States was made larger on the map to look like it was a comparable size to, like, Africa and other places that were larger than us. And the ways that those things kind of begin to ingrain into our minds, right? oh, Egypt is a part of the Middle Eastern culture, right? And certainly not a part of Africans. Black people didn't have anything to do with that, is how they would teach that, right? The United States, we position ourselves in certain kinds of ways to be the biggest, the baddest, the most important, and we will even do it in a map. Right. And so it makes you think about the United States in a different kind of way. Right.
We are the exceptional ones.
Exactly. And if we think about this from a queer and trans perspective, and we're thinking about like legislating and then putting into history books and then into the curriculum, which I don't even know what it's going to look like because there won't be a Department of Education. But when we're thinking about like teaching that to children, right, and not ever speaking about queerness, not speaking about transness, then we have this moment right now where we have so many people talking about, oh, there's so many more queer people, there's so many more trans people, or aligned on the side of that, we also hear people talking about mental health, right? There's so many people who are more depressed, or so many people who have anxiety. The real truth of that is there's not necessarily always more people. We just have more language for it, right? A lot more of us have been discussing it. A lot more of us have been maybe seeing a TV show with a person who's experiencing depression, or we were listening to a show that has a trans person on it, or we, engage these different things in different kinds of ways, and we're able to identify with it and understand it. Approaching it in this way from a legislative perspective and coming in and saying, like, we're actually going to legislate that there are only two genders, that starts to shape how people think about these things differently. And I think if we're thinking about children in an educational setting who will be learning there's this gender and there's that gender, and there might be a mention of there are other people who say that transness is real, that's not real, that's fake, right? That's something that is disgusting and evil and terrible. That starts to get into the moral imagination of the children who are then going out into the world and maybe having questions themselves about, am I queer? No, I can't be that. And I speak about this from experience as one of those children, right, who was taught that being gay was evil, that it was wrong, that it was something that God hated. And how many years it has taken for me to be able to kind of begin to unlearn that. I'm at Harvard University, right? I'm at Harvard Divinity School right now, studying the Black church and the ways in which it has impacted queer and trans people negatively, and thinking about how we can use that information to better serve that community. And like, we are moving backwards, right? Kamala Harris was saying we are not going back. This is going back. And that's the real concern to me.
Yeah, we'll continue this when we come forward. But a couple comments here in the chat. HW says, I think people understand intersex conditions. Terry says, is Trump going to ban fish? Because fish can change their gender too. HW says they are saying gender is not sex. Does a fish have a gender? They can change their sex under certain circumstances. To go further, I'd say the comment shows that we see sex and gender as the same thing because it has meant the same thing for centuries. And so, I mean, at least they're having an intelligent conversation in the chat. It seems like what's happening in Washington is, given where we are, especially if you talk about the way that Gen A and Gen Z look at these things, we are having a Neanderthal conversation on the government level to something that has, to concepts and conversations that have evolved far beyond that, just in not even with scientists, just with everyday people.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is going to be different this time around than I was a kid or when you were a kid is that these kids have the internet, right? They have access to information in a way that we didn't before. I think we've seen that really happen in a large way when we think about Gaza and the coverage of Gaza from mainstream media to the coverage of Gaza on TikTok, right? And how distinctly different those things were, and how many young people are like, wait. Israel was what? Israel showed up how? And they've been doing what to these people? Oh, that's not okay, right? And I think the same thing will be true for this generation that has a lot more information, a lot more access. And I'm curious to see how that's going to show up.
Yeah. 800-920-1580. It's not too late to call me. Jarrett Hill is my guest, and we're talking about all the things on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Add confidence to every holiday adventure and get it done with a rugged and capable Chevy truck or SUV. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Silverado, Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 22.2%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/2/24.
An official message from Medicare.
Couple more minutes, and we'll start this month's book club.
You know, I usually love a plot twist, but this year, I'm comparing my options during Medicare open enrollment.
You can't assume your current health or drug plan is the best one for you.
And you gotta make sure your drugs are covered. That's important.
So is saving money.
Review all your options at Medicare.gov. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
If you have asthma, you know that there are certain things that can set off your asthma symptoms. These things are called triggers, and patients with severe asthma have an average of 8 triggers. It could be pollen, dust, pollution, colds, viruses, smoke, or stress. If you know your symptoms, you have already taken the first step to managing your asthma. The next step is to write your triggers down in a notebook or journal and record your symptoms when you come across those triggers. This will give your healthcare provider valuable information about what you can do to help manage your triggers. By understanding your triggers and writing them down, you are on your way to taking back control of your lung health. Visit luma-edu.com for more guidance. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Here's another great reason to use the United States Postal Service this season. Your boxes are wrapped and the gifts are in. Our employees are ready. Let the holiday ride begin. Let's start with the price. It's easy to manage when you ship with the reliable USPS Ground Advantage. In just a few days, it's sure to arrive. We're working nonstop to keep the spirit alive. USPS Ground Advantage, the affordable and reliable shipping solution for the holidays. Visit USPS.com/advantage.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Talking with award-winning journalist and author Jarrett Hill. You can find his Historically Black Phrases. That's the book at historicallyblackphrases.com. And the fun never stops. It seems like it's really just going to be mind-boggling. I feel like I haven't even had a chance to touch on so many things that have happened since last Tuesday. But RFK being tapped to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services is pretty remarkable, isn't it?
A friend of mine, Keith Boykin over at CNN, he's been stating it as like, we would not even be having a conversation about RFK if his last name was not Kennedy. He has no qualifications in this direction. He, very much like Matt Gaetz, right? There's no qualifications here. There's nothing about him that says, like, I'm ready to run an entire department focus on this, right? RFK is one of those candidates who has been on these far-right conspiracy theory kind of podcasts and really kind of grown that kind of following. But, like, the idea that he's going to now come in and be running Health and Human Services is wild. It is wild.
Yeah, I mean, this is the person that told us he had a worm in his brain. And, you know, it's not surprising that the president-elect would pick an anti-vaxxer. But this person goes way beyond being a vaccine skeptic. He's pretty far down in the weeds as far as, being unusual in his views.
Yeah, and the thing that this also makes me think about is you mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion in the last segment, and like the ways that we think about qualifications have often been kind of problematic, and oftentimes excluded a lot of people from being quote qualified for jobs. But when we look at this slate of candidate studies putting up, particularly RFK Jr. and again Matt Gaetz and some of the others, it's like, what does it take to be qualified for a job other than us knowing your name? Right, or being familiar with you, because as we look at how they're going to continue to attack Black and brown and queer and trans and all kinds of different people, we're going to be seeing how this last election, their whole narrative about Kamala Harris was that she was stupid, she was unqualified, she was unworthy of the title, and blah 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 blah. And then we see all of these appointments like an RFK Jr. and you're like, well, so how do we justify that one? Right, and they don't have to, right? He's going to be a second-term president who seemingly doesn't have to go through another election and doesn't really care what the people think, right? And like this is what happens when you put that type of person in office. We're in that find out phase.
Peter Hegseth, the Fox News weekend host and Army veteran, who has been picked to be the Secretary of Defense. Speaking of DEI, replacing a 4-star general who's Black. With a Fox host. Now it's come out that he was investigated for sexual assault in 2017 in Monterey, California. Police are saying that they're not giving out the name or the age of the victim, but they said that there were contusions, no weapons involved. And I wonder, again, the president-elect has talked about recess appointments. This is just a preliminary scratching the surface of the background on this guy. And I'm sure with RFK and others, there will be, Matt Gaetz, there will be much more to uncover. What do you think when you hear this?
Well, you actually are kind of touching on the point that I was making about qualifications, because each of the different people that we've named, these 4 different men, all have sexual assault, right, in their history. And as we think about an administration that has been, a campaign that will become an administration that has been so hostile toward women, it's a very clear signal to us how they feel about women and how they feel about men, right? What they think about what men should be able to do, how they think men should be able to show up in the world. Each of these men, Donald Trump, Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr., and the gentleman that you just named, Hegseth from Fox News.
Yeah.
Hegseth, thank you. I've been trying to get that name. Each of them has sexual assault in their record, right? Each of them has a record that is definitely questionable and certainly troubling. And so I think we see what the qualifications are. And it, again, tells us something about what to expect from this administration, and tells us who we should be looking out for, right? Who the people are that we should be most concerned about. We've already talked about trans folks and queer folks, but like when we're thinking about women, I'm always concerned when I see a Black person that is the first person or the only person in their job, right, or at their school or in a part of their institution. I'm thinking about the women that will be working in these administrations, right, under these men who are accused of and sometimes been litigated for sexual assault, for sexual misconduct. I think about like what is it going to be like to work in that administration as a deputy, as an assistant, as even as a higher up. Right, as a vice president of a corporation, or leading these different organizations, it's really telling to me. Like, we are about to see a very distinct thing start to happen in a way that I think we had already started to see receding more after the Me Too movement. This is definitely alarming in that way as well.
Yeah. Well, we've got about a minute here, Jarrett Hill, and I want to give it to you because a lot of folks are feeling discouraged. What's encouraging you? What's getting you fired up? What do you think we ought to be doing at this moment in history?
Yeah, I'm a person who's experienced a lot of depression and anxiety over my life, and like I've definitely been feeling that rising up in me. But I think the thing that has been most encouraging to me is knowing that these are the times when we get innovative and we rise up in a different and unique and specific kind of way. And so I am very curious about how we're going to see ourselves show up in this. And when I say we, I mean Black folks. I mean queer and trans folks. I mean all kinds of different folks. And I also mean communities that I'm not a part of. I'm not a woman, but I'm curious to see how we're going to see women rise up in this moment, particularly Black women, right, in this moment. Not having expectations of them, because I'm also very much like, don't ask Black women to do nothing else like after this last election.
Yeah.
But I'm in a class where I'm reading Black women, right, from throughout history and like seeing the ways that they've been able to shape and inform culture in really important ways. So I'm encouraged by the idea of how we're going to respond in this moment.
Jarrett Hill, what are your socials again? Let's get this man's socials.
You can find me at Jarrett Hill on the Instagram, on the Blue Sky, on the Threads. I'm leaving the X, the Twitter, but you can find me at Jarrett Hill, 2 R's and 2 T's, and Jarrett. I'd love to see y'all on social media. You can hit me up. My DMs are open.
Thanks for taking a minute out of your studies to spend some time with us this morning.
Absolutely. I got to go figure out what classes I'm taking next semester. So.
Good luck with that. I'm on my Maya Angelou this week, speaking of Black women. So my quote for the weekend is Maya Angelou. She says, try to be the rainbow in someone's cloud. There's a lot of clouds right now. I'm Dominique DiPrima. History is now, and we are making it together. Best of Tavis Smiley is next. Until Monday, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know from BIN News. President-elect Trump is nominating Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Trump criticized the industrial food complex and drug companies for public health misinformation and praised Kennedy's stance against vaccine mandates, promising to restore transparency and scientific integrity in health agencies. Elon Musk announced he will work without compensation as head of the new Department of Government Efficiency under President-elect Trump. He expects the role to be challenging and to make many enemies. And Advance Auto Parts is closing over 700 locations nationwide as part of a restructuring plan. About 500 corporate and 200 independently owned stores will shut down by mid-2025. And the Christmas action comedy film Red One is hoping to do a bit of damage at the box office this weekend. The movie, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Chris Evans, is looking to make between $30 and $35 million in its debut. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
For any plumbing emergency, Rooter Hero Plumbing is California's top choice for rapid response, quality work, and customer satisfaction. Depend on them for lasting solutions. Book directly at rooterhero.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LeBron is going for his 4th straight triple-double in tonight's game in San Antonio. It's one of the few milestones LeBron has not accomplished in his spectacular 22-year career. Longtime Spurs coach Greg Popovich will miss his 8th straight game. Pop is recovering from a mild stroke he suffered on November 2nd. Spurs assistant Mitch Johnson has been filling in for Pop. Tip-off time at 4:30 on ESPN. The Clippers have a rematch tonight with the Rockets in Houston at 5 p.m. Former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson slapped Jake Paul in the face during their weigh-in on Thursday. Security stepped in before things got out of hand. Tyson was upset that Paul stepped on his foot on purpose during the stare-down. Tyson and Paul square off tonight at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Netflix will have live coverage. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Bad Ash Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Time Time now for the best of Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavisSmileyShow.com. That's thetavisSmileyShow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, body language expert and CEO of Sisterpreneur, Linda Clemens, talks about the power of human connection and how we can have healthy relationships with family and friends during times of great divide, like this one, and during times of loneliness, like this one, as we head into the holidays. If you have never heard Linda Clemens, she's as real as they come, and I promise you, hour two is going to bless you today when Linda Clemens shows up.